Well, good afternoon once again, ladies and gentlemen. I want to welcome you to our informational session for the revised Pearl River, Mississippi, the revised Pearl River Basin, Mississippi Flood Risk Management Project. We truly appreciate all of you joining us today. We know there's a lot of places and a lot of things you could be doing, but you're here and we appreciate that. My name is Brandon Davis, and I serve as the planning lead here at the Vicksburg District. A couple of people I want to introduce before we get going. Ms. Pat Hempfield, she is our Deputy of Project Management. She is the lead civilian here at the Vicksburg District. Also have Dr. Kelly Keefe on the line. She is our planning chief at the Mississippi Valley Division here in Vicksburg. But want to go ahead and get this started, this informational session started. So at this time, pleasure to introduce to you our Colonel Jeremiah Gibson. He is the commander of the Vicksburg District for opening remarks.
Thank you, Brandon. Good afternoon online. My name is Colonel Jeremiah Gibson, and I'm the commander of the Vicksburg District. I'm honored to address you today regarding the revised draft environmental impact statement for the Pearl River Basin, Mississippi Federal Flood Risk Management Project. This marks a significant interagency milestone to address flood risks in Jackson, Mississippi. And I want to emphasize the critical role in your participation during this National Environmental Policy Act review period. The NEPA process ensures federal projects are thoroughly evaluated for their environmental impacts, technical feasibility, and align with the public interest. This revised draft environmental impact statement, published on July 3rd of this year, 2025, and open for public comment until August 18th, 2025, evaluates flood risk management alternatives to protect the Jackson metropolitan area from devastating impacts of flooding as experienced in years 1979, 1983, and 2020, as well as others. Your feedback during this 45-day public comment period is essential to sharing and updating the project that is effective and responsive to the needs of all communities. Under Section 3104 of the Water Resource Development Act of 2007, the Secretary of the Army is authorized to construct a flood risk management plan that is technically feasible, environmentally acceptable, and provides a level of flood damage reduction equal to or greater than the National Economic Development Plan. The revised draft environmental impact statement assesses these criteria using the report, which meets rigorous engineering standards while minimizing environmental impacts. This includes evaluating the Pearl River Basin in its entirety, and we look forward to engaging with downstream communities, especially during in-person sessions in Jackson and Monticello, Mississippi, as well as Slidell, Louisiana. Our commitment is to deliver a project that is both practical and sustainable, preserving the natural resources of the Pearl River while protecting all communities. Community input is the cornerstone of this process. The previous draft DEIS, released last year in June of 2024, received over 6,000 comments, demonstrating the deep engagement of our stakeholders. This feedback prompted us to refine this project and these alternatives, ensuring the proposed solutions balance technical flood risk reduction and environmental stewardship. By participating in public meetings, submitting written comments, or engaging through mail or written mail, you help us identify concerns, refine alternatives, and ensure community participation. Said another way, your voices ensure the solutions presented reflect the priorities of those who live, work, and thrive in this region. We need to hear your thoughts and recommendations. In closing, I urge you to engage in this NEPA review process. Attend our public meetings, review the revised draft environmental impact statement, and share your ideas. Your participation ensures we develop a flood risk management solution that is technically sound, environmentally responsible, and reflective of our shared vision for a resilient Jackson metropolitan area. Thank you, and I look forward to your valuable feedback. Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you, sir. And We're going to go ahead and get started. Well, why are we here today? Well, there are two reasons. First, provide an update to the interested parties, like all of you, on the current status of the project and the changes that have been made since we had our last public review period that most of you were involved with. And second, we want to give you the opportunity to provide comments to us on the updates that we have made. Tell us what you think about it, what works, what doesn't work, what we may still need to improve, and how these changes most importantly affect you and your communities. This project's more than just flood risk reduction. It's about protecting people, their homes, businesses, natural resources, and the future of the Pearl River Basin. But it only works if people who live in the area are a part of the conversation. We want to hear directly from you because your feedback certainly matters. Your voices will help shape the path forward. Whether you support the revisions, have concerns, we want to hear from you. This space is for you. So again, thank you for showing up, being a part of this very important process. We'll look forward to sharing updates with you, and most importantly, want to hear your thoughts. This slide that you're looking at is the agenda. I don't really believe in reading slides to people, so I'm going to be going over some information in addition to what's on the slides, but there are a few housekeeping items that we would like to share with you. If you go to the next slide. Thank you, David. So on slide 4, before we begin, like I said, a couple of ground rules, I'd say ground rules of today's virtual meeting. We want to make sure this is running smoothly and we're respectful to each other. First, please note this meeting is being recorded and all chat and messages will become part of the public record. So keep that in mind if you have a comment. Obviously, we want to hear from you, but any personal information, phone numbers, email addresses, you might want to omit from sharing those, but you can get with us directly with that information. But anything in the chat is going to be public record, so keep that in mind. To reduce distractions, we'd ask all participants to remain on mute. Keep your cameras turned off during the presentation. We don't want to make sure that we are not having any issues with bandwidth on the presentation side. So we'll keep cameras off unless you're speaking. If you would like to ask a question or share a comment during the meeting, you can do that using the chat function. If you're not familiar with it, you can find it by clicking on the chat word. It's up toward the top of the icon. It's a bubble icon at the top of your screen. And as a reminder, please do not spam in the chat. Keep all comments and questions respectful. We're all adults here. I hate to even have to say this, but just for the purpose, disrespectful or threatening language will not be tolerated and may result in being removed from the meeting. We're all professionals here. I don't expect that to happen. The comment period, as Colonel Gibson mentioned, will continue through August 18th, 2025. So you're welcome to submit comments at any time. You can submit them via email, USPS mail. We have also, as you can see, we have QR codes on the screen. That will lead you to the websites when you can see the full report and gather more information that you might have. Again, thank you for joining us, and looking forward to having a very productive and good discussion. Next slide.
Hey, Brandon, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, Dr. Keefe.
Hi, yes, it's Kelly Keefe. Hello, everyone. Hey. Brandon, I just wanted to cut in for a second because we've got at least one person on the phone who probably wants to give an opening comment and show the folks who have joined us how important this project is to headquarters. We have Mr. Bush with us. And then I'm not sure if Andrea Walker was able to join, but she planned to call from the Secretary of the Army's office. So if she's on, she might want to say something as well. So I agree with you. It's good to get right to the meat of the presentation, but I also want to show people how much this project means and that we've got people participating in our meetings from these high levels.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Keefe.
There you go.
Thank you so much, Dr. Keefe. Mr. Bush, any comments?
Well, thanks, Kelly, and thanks, Brandon. And I just want to echo Colonel Gibson's comments to lead off the meeting here today, the purpose and the need. But what I will add also is this is, as Dr. Keefe says, a very highly visible project in Army Civil Works. We provide updates to the Secretary of the Army's office every week on the progress being made on this report and the project. And it's a matter of urgent need. And so, we plan to finish our decision process this year, and this public engagement process that we're now involved in is integral to that. So just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bush. Ms. Walker, I saw that you're on from the ASA's office. Do you have any comments? Maybe she'll get back to us later. But no, Dr. Keefe, thank you for jumping in there, introducing Mr. Bush. We do appreciate you guys being here, supporting us today at the district. All right. As you can see on the presentation, this is the table of contents for the report. So if you are interested in looking at the report, as I told you, we have QR codes that you can scan to get to this. Our team's done a great job of making sure that you have availability to that. This is what you'll see in the main report. You'll see all of the various sections and also the appendices that we have for you to look at. Team's done a great job of putting all of this together. Next slide. This is our public meeting schedule. Of course, today we're having our informational kickoff session, really setting the table for you so you can see what we have for you and what, have access to the report. But here's the actual schedule we're going to have. We'll start off in Monticello, Mississippi, down at the Lawrence County Civic Center. You'll see that's Tuesday, July 29th. And then we have a meeting on the 30th down at Slidell. And then we'll conclude this public session, 2 meetings planned in Jackson on the 31st. You'll see the sites there on the screen. The big thing is that if you have any information, this information is also on our MVK website. And if you need to reference it for the future, it's www.mvk.usace.army.mil. We'll make sure we have that in the chat session for you. We invite you to come to all these meetings or any of these meetings that you're able to provide comments. And we look forward to meeting you in person if we had a chance to talk to you and collaborate. Next slide. All right, so project purpose. Why does this matter? It's really important that we try to understand why it's matter. And really the so what of this is that the city of Jackson's home to about 500,000 people that has faced repeated flooding. Because of that, we've been given the authority to look at possible solutions and study the effects on the area. If these solutions prove to reduce flood damages, are environmentally sound, and make economic sense, they could lead to construction and a decision being made by the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works. Since our visit last year, we have shared the first draft of the draft environmental impact statement. We received over 6,000 public comments. So if you submitted a comment, thank you. Again, we need to hear from you to try to make this a better document. In general, the feedback focused on concerns about flood risk, impacts on habitat, downstream effects, and economic considerations. Based on your input, we refined the project options, completed a detailed economic analysis, and revisited key project features to better address these concerns and to improve flood risk management. It's important to note, as I said, we are providing this information to the Office of the Secretary of Army for Civil Works so they can make an informed decision on the information provided to them. Next slide. This timeline is a very good timeline, a lot of information. Most of you are familiar with it, but this really goes over the flooding of what's been going on in Jackson from the beginning. And we go all the way back to 1879 doing literature review. That's the first documented major flooding that we've had. And we go all the way here to 2020. Most of you also are probably familiar with the Great Easter Flood of 1979 that really tried to set the table of one of the table setters for what we're doing here today. But you can see the history of the flooding and the financial impacts. They're going to be detailed throughout the report for anyone that may be interested in learning more. But I'll give you a second to take a look at this really good historic perspective of the flooding events in Jackson. All right, so as you've had a chance to look at that, we're going to start shifting toward looking at the alternatives that we have presented in the revised draft document here. As we go through the slides and highlight the main points, you'll notice that each slide includes a reference at the bottom of the page where applicable, where you can find more information about the report. For example, when we get to the hydraulic slide, you might have a specific question about the sections of where the hydraulics are located. You're going to see the sections that are where they're located at. And if you look at the slide here below at the very bottom, we're referring to section 2 and section 4 of the impacts of the flooding area. So trying to let you know where you can go look in the report if there's an area that you want to look at. And again, the full report and all the appendices, as we just talked about, can be found on our online at mvk.usace.army.mil. All right, next slide. All right, so whenever the Corps of Engineers evaluates a project, we don't just consider one idea. We have to look at a wide range of possibilities, and we formulate alternatives from that. For this project, we started the process with a study for USACE back in around 2007. Over time, that is involved into the 2020 plan that was released by our non-federal partners, Rankin Hines, followed by the draft that we released back in 2024. Now we're here with you today with a revised draft environmental impact statement, or you probably see, we call it DEIS. It's kind of a tongue twister, but it's a draft environmental impact statement. From those versions and input from along the way, we narrowed it down to a focus group of alternatives, and we arrived at 3 alternatives, as you can see on the screen right now, for this revised draft document. So alternative A1 was a non-structural approach. We looked at that. We also had alternative D1 and alternative E1. D1 is a structural option that includes a weir the weir is going to be located south of the I-20 bridge. And then E1 is a similar structural option, but it does not include the weir. And we'll dive in more into that momentarily. Alternative A1, as we said, is a non-structural approach that was carried forward from the 2024 draft document and modified to include a levee feature, the Canton Club levee. The non-structural approach to flood risk management focuses on reducing damage and risk without building large physical structures like dams, levees, or channels. Like I said, it's non-structural in nature. Instead, it uses strategies that adapt to help natural environment and help the people and the property stay out of harm's way. This may include elevating homes, flood-proofing structures, and/or buyouts or relocations. The successful implementation of A1 relies on voluntary participation of qualified homeowners and may include additional costs incurred by the homeowners. While A1 has gathered a lot of support from our non-governmental organizations and certain federal agencies, it does fall short of being an effective and practical alternative for the study, making it insufficient for addressing the long-term flood risk problems in the areas. And so it's been screened out from consideration and will not be carried forward at this time. So right now we're going to move along and look at alternatives D1 on the next slide. So alternative D1 focuses on a comprehensive structural solution to reduce flood risk in the Jackson area. This approach includes a series of large-scale construction efforts that's designed to improve and manage the flow of water through the Pearl River system. So kind of deep dive into what D1 does is it's a deepening of the channel overbank. Is going to be the area adjacent to the channel. It's going to allow for more water to pass through high flow events, and it's going to reduce the likelihood of flooding in those surrounding areas. It's adding levee sections, 4 key levee sections. The Canton Club, McLeod, Richland, and Caney Creek would be built to provide flood protection to approximately 705 homes and 40 industrial structures behind the new Jackson area levees. It does have a weir. We've talked about that, but that weir also includes a fish passage, but the new weir is going to be built to help regulate water levels. It would also include the fish passage, as I mentioned, to help maintain aquatic connectivity and also support the local ecosystem. The weir would provide attractive locations for recreation and future economic development. The non-federal levee improvements, levees not currently under federal jurisdiction, such as the one near the Savannah Street wastewater treatment plant, would also be improved to increase system-wide protection for the area. There would be some bridge modifications under D1 as well. Some bridges would need to be altered or replaced to accommodate the channel modifications to ensure safe, uninterrupted traffic flow. Finally, the mitigation features. These may include environmental enhancements, habitat restorations, or other compensatory measures to offset any unavoidable impacts from construction activities. Overall, D1 aims to reduce flood risk through major infrastructure upgrades while also taking steps to minimize the environmental impacts and maintaining ecological functions. Currently, there are no non-structural elements in alternatives D1 or E1, but the Assistant Secretary of the Army could add some of those features in once they do their review. Just want to note that. All right, let's go to slide 11, please, David. All right, so alternative E1, it exactly mirrors what D1 does, with the exception we do not have a weir for E1 like we do for D1 we just talked about. This impacts the cost and benefits of this option because, like I said, we don't have the structural of the weir in there. We're going to get to that momentarily when we focus on the economic slides. So what we want to do right now, we're going to shift to important topics. We've heard a lot during our public meetings and in the comments from last year's draft DEIS about the hydraulics. But what we want to talk about, really what hydraulics is the behavior and the movement of the water and how it flows. But again, that's the importance of having the discussion that we had, is learning from you how we can better explain some of the features. So right now, we go to slide 12. We're going to get into the hydraulics. A very good graph put together by the team. It shows how the water surface levels are expected to change with and without the project during a 100-year event. Now, a 100-year event is a storm with a 1% chance of occurring in any given year, and that is really the benchmark of how we evaluate flood risk in the Corps of Engineers. And we're looking at this graph, though, to interpret it. The upstream of the dam is going to be on the right side of the figure. So if you look at the right side of the figure, that is going to be traveling back north toward the Ross Barnett Reservoir, back toward the city of Jackson. You can see Byram's listed down there at the bottom left-hand corner, but that's going to be the way this graph is set up. Upstream is going to be to the right. The blue line, if you can see the blue line, that shows the water surface level without the project being implemented. When we put the project in place, the orange line shows what the water surface levels for D1 and E1 would be in place. D1, as we talked about earlier, is going to be located, the weir for D1, is going to be located downstream of I-20. You can see that on the far right, marked by the arrow, you can see I-20 and alternative D1 proposed weir site. So you can see where the weir comes into play and how the water surface elevations vary from that point. So the extent of the impact, team has done a really good job of modeling this. Our modeling shows that the hydraulic impacts extend only about 5 miles north of Monticello during a 100-year event. As we talked about, a 100-year event, 1% chance of that flood occurring in any given year. For high flows, impacts become negligible, beyond the confluence of the Copiah Creek, just south of Georgetown, Mississippi. It's very important to note there. South of Byram, the influence of the project steadily declines due to the natural and physical and the ecological characteristics of the Pearl River system, such that it's widening and connecting to other tributaries. Okay. Some of the final thoughts on this: for low flow scenarios, a mandatory drought flow gate is included in the weir design. We heard from several people downstream of the concern of drying up the Pearl River. So we have heard you. So a mandatory drought flow gate is included in the design. This gate is going to help maintain water levels with minimum flows from Ross Barnett Reservoir that don't naturally reach the weir, like during drought or water supply withdrawals. Importantly, really to know this feature does not increase downstream flows, but it also doesn't reduce them either, ensuring that no stress to downstream communities during dry conditions. All right, next slide. Economics. And one thing when I go through this, what I really want to emphasize to you is that there is a 44% cost contingency on our dollar values based on current level of design. So once we get to more phases where we're able to look at the design and get more information, these numbers may decrease or they could increase. We're not quite sure. That's why we have a contingency based on it right now, based on the current level of design that we have. But also looking at this, both alternatives, E1 and D1, would reduce annual damages from flooding from the headwater of the Pearl River by approximately 70%. Both alternatives would remove approximately 90% of residential structures from the 100-year floodplain and approximately 60% from the 500-year floodplain. Both alternatives would also remove over 60% of non-residential structures from the 100-year floodplain and approximately 70% from the 500-year floodplain. But again, I think what we really need to take away from this on the cost is we talked about the contingency based on the current level of design we have in that. All right, next slide. These next few slides, we're going to focus on the status of our environmental compliance. This is a very rich ecological area, so a lot of effort has been put into this. First thing we're going to talk about, in addition to the notes that are listed on the slides, is the threatened and endangered species. Based upon available data, it was determined that alternative D1 may affect but would not likely adversely affect the northern long-eared bat and the tricolored bat, and would likely adversely affect but not jeopardize the continued existence of the Gulf sturgeon, ring sawback turtle, the Pearl River map turtle, alligator snapping turtle, Louisiana pigtoe mussel, and the monarch butterfly. Also, the Corps of Engineers determined that E1 may affect but will not likely adversely affect all species mentioned for D1, with the exception of the turtle species, because we're not going to have the weir. Alternative E1 would not have the weir in the channel compared to what D1 would. Alternative E1 would also likely adversely affect but not likely jeopardize the continued existence of the ring sawback turtle, the Pearl River map turtle, and the alligator snapping turtle, as I mentioned. So we worked with Fish and Wildlife Service. They concurred with these determinations and provided a reasonable and prudent measures and terms of conditions to implement that would minimize the adverse effects. These can be found in our biological opinion, which is in Appendix D of the draft document. Encourage you to go take a look at that if you have an interest. Implementation of these reasonably and prudent measures and terms of conditions are mandatory for the listed species. Should either alternative move to construction, there are steps that must be taken to reduce the impacts to the species listed as threatened or endangered. Okay. Habitat mitigation. The preliminary mitigation plan can be found in Appendix F of the draft document. It was developed in coordination with our non-federal interest, Rankin Hines, and other resource agencies. It is a general mitigation plan based on existing data that is specific to the project and to the area. The team agreed on data assumptions and applied professional experience and judgment where appropriate and applicable. The lands identified by the non-federal interest are being assessed for forested habitat mitigation. These lands are within the Pearl River Basin and available for acquisition. Many riverine measures were identified for consideration. However, only one of the measures, the removal of at least one obsolete aquatic barrier downstream of the new weir, had enough data and information based on like location, cost, and ownership to move forward within this phase of USACE planning. The remaining riverine mitigation measures would likely be assessed in a detailed in subsequent measures of the design, but prior to construction. Really, there's some information we don't know yet, but as we know more, we will make the adjustments that we need to. There may be the need to combine several riverine mitigation measures to mitigate for the entire riverine impacts. Both alternatives would impact several ponds and oxbow lakes that are considered lacustrine habitat. However, D1 would create a larger but similar type of habitat, so mitigation would not be required because it would be self-mitigating because we're creating a body of water. For alternative E1, that same habitat would be impacted, but mitigation would be required as the weir would not create a large body of water for the similar habitat. The mitigation we just talked about is lacustrine mitigation is being proposed within the newly excavated areas with construction of oxbow type lakes and ponds. All right, so it's important to know that when the Secretary of the Army identifies what the tentatively selected plan is going to be, a project-specific mitigation plan will be developed using the appropriate species and models to refine project impacts and identify mitigation measures that would sufficiently mitigate all habitat types. We just don't have enough information right now to wrap up what that mitigation plan would be, but we will once we know. All right, for HTRW, hazardous, toxic, and radioactive waste, HTRW, you hear me call that. For any project that involves the Corps of Engineers and American Society for Testing Materials, Phase 1 environmental site assessment must be completed to outline and identify any potential concerns surrounding HTRW. If concerns are found, a phase 2 might be done, which a phase 2 is really more detailed, collecting soil and water and determining if there are concerns within the samples. For this project, there have been over 6 environmental site assessments on the area, and prior to any form of construction, HTRW site assessments would be done. Currently, within the study area, we do have Superfund sites as well as 2 landfills and the former Gulf States creosote site. So more information or more analysis would be done before we would be able to construct anything for the project. All right, next slide. All right, a very good graphic there on the right-hand side of the page. You can see the graphic was provided by Mississippi Department of Archives and History, MDAH. And you can see this is an area that's a fairly rich area with cultural resources. The cultural resources are physical or intangible elements that reflect the cultural, historical, or social values of the community and society. As with all studies, these were considered in the revised draft EIS. Alternatives E1 and D1 have potential to cause reasonably foreseeable adverse effects to historic properties, including National Register listed and eligible buildings, districts, sites, and structures. 4106, Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act is a federal law that requires agencies to consider the effects of their projects on historic properties before they are carried out. It preserves cultural heritage and ensures that important historical buildings, sites, structures, and cultural resources are identified and considered during project planning. The undertaking is complex and it may impact historical properties with the full effects are still uncertain. A programmatic agreement is being negotiated with the State Historic Preservation Officer, or what we call the SHPO, or tribes and other stakeholders to avoid, minimize, or mitigate adverse effects. The PA will be finalized before the record of decision is signed, ideally ahead of the final EIS. Our environmental team, our cultural resource team has done a fantastic job of working with our agencies to come up with a plan for this project. All right, next slide. Tribal resources. The project team has been actively coordinating with federal recognized tribes throughout the study process. To date, no tribal lands or specific tribal rights have been identified within the study area. However, our tribes have acknowledged the presence of protected tribal resources, and those include cultural keystone species, which are essential plants, animals, or natural resources that are central to tribal cultural and identity. Also, some significant sites and landscapes such as burial grounds, historic trails, traditional villages, gathering places, fisheries, and other locations of cultural or spiritual importance. These resources are being considered in the planning process to ensure respectful and responsible treatment of the areas within the cultural value. Water quality, you see that in the middle of the slide deck there. A Section 404B1 evaluation will be conducted after further data is provided. A Section 401 pre-filing meeting request was submitted to MDEQ, Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality, on July 11th, 2023, and was reissued on April 26th of 2024 and April 10th of 2025 due to the inclusion of additional features with the alternative. Finally, recreation on this slide. Currently, it's quite difficult for public access to the Pearl River and the study area because of much of the land along the waterfront is privately owned. There are 2 public boat ramps, one at LaFleur Bluff State Park, and another at the Ross Barnett Reservoir Dam. With the no action alternative, public access to the river for recreational use will continue to depend on existing flood control operation and maintenance, as well as managing other future developments around Jackson and central Mississippi. However, alternatives D1 and E1 does create the potential for public recreational opportunities. These opportunities include new boat ramps, kayak, canoe launches, camping areas, fishing piers, trails for bikes, and hiking, and places to watch wildlife. Any construction associated with these alternatives will focus on the river channel and bank areas disturbed by construction, and these potential recreational features will be studied in more detail as the project moves forward, especially a fishing trail. Never heard of that one before. Final slide. All right, so we went through the information here, and again, we were so grateful that you joined us today. I want to thank you for your time. We will keep the chat open for 10 to 15 minutes after we close things out. Remember, please do not include any personal information, phone numbers, email addresses, anything that you don't want to expose to the public, because this is going to be used for the public record. So, Colonel Gibson, do you have any closing remarks? Good. All right. Thank you, sir. So, once again, thank you all for joining us today. The schedule of the public meetings, like I said, Monticello, Slidell, and Jackson. We hope that you'll join us. We're going to be accepting comments through August 18th of 2025, and those comments can be sent to Mr. Jason Emery as listed here on this page. Also, please visit our district website for a copy of the report, or you can scan our QR code. Like I said, 10 to 15 minutes after this, and we're going to close things out. But again, thank you for being here with us today.
Got 19%, I'm good.
Hey, once again, it's Brandon Davis here. Once again, I want to thank you all for the great comments. Again, looking forward to seeing you at our public meetings we're going to have at Monticello, Slidell, and the 2 in Jackson. Ms. Kilroy just put some information out there in the chat for you as well. We're going to stay on to about 2:55, but again, there are numerous ways that you can provide comments to us. So thank you all, and we'll be seeing you first meeting in Monticello. Y'all take care. Have a great day.